Here we go. Go, guys, bring the leg. The legendary Jerry Lee Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I love you. Welcome to the Massey Hall here, ladies and gentlemen, to a great theater and a great show tonight. You're going to enjoy it. Woo! My name is Jerry Lee Lewis, and thank you. Take me if you please. I went down to the crossroads, tried to beg a ride. Down to the crossroads, tried to beg a ride. Nobody seemed to know me, everybody passed my high. Well, I'm going down the road there. Take my rider by my side. Going down to Rosedale. Take my rider by my side. We can still build a house, baby, on the riverside.
Rock and roll primarily evolved from the blues. Some people say it was 4 Southern good old boys who introduced the music form which shaped popular music today. These young Southern souls were signed to Sam Phillips' legendary rock and roll label, Sun Records. A simple black vinyl disc with a yellow label spread the word that rock and roll was here to stay. Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Elvis Presley, rightly considered legends, rocked the nation and still do. Today, there's only one left, the killer, Jerry Lee Lewis. But do these icons really deserve the credit for the birth of rock and roll? Or was it the guys from whom they borrowed the licks? Perhaps rock and roll is more about a unique moment in time, an era when racism was rampant and segregation ran through the Deep South like the muddy waters of the Mississippi. Nobody knew it better than a sharecropper's son by the name of Carl Perkins.
My 3 brothers was the only white people in the field with about 65 cotton choppers and pickers. You got to remember, back when I was a kid, they didn't have cotton pickers.
Right outside of Pinson there?
That's it. And I'm telling you, you picked up from them. They get singing, woo. If they didn't know the words, they go, boom, ba, ba, boom, ba, ba, boom. I can hear that cotton patch music today. Well, I'd go listen to from the great Atlantic Ocean to the wide Pacific shore. Boom, ba, boom, boom. My daddy'd say, "That boy, you're running Roy's song." I couldn't help doing it the way I heard it in the cotton patch. And if it hadn't have been for my mama, I probably got run off my guitar, got burned for kindling. My daddy didn't like the way I was doing Wabash Cannonball. He didn't want me messing up Ernest Tubbs' Walking the Floor View. I put the rhythm in because I was affected by what I heard and feel, and that's the only place I could hear it. I was very poor, we didn't have a radio to listen to, you know, and I'd scoot my old guitar up next to the library. I don't know whether my daddy was right or wrong. I've talked to a few people through the years that said the old man might have been right. He would never, we wasn't allowed to turn the radio on and off. He did that. And he listened to nothing but country music. He'd listen to the Grand Ole Opry on Saturday night. And I'd scoot up next to that old library table with my little guitar. and try to hear Bill Monroe. I liked Bill Monroe's bluegrass because it was more like the cotton field music I was hearing. That you know, I traced the little footprints in the snow. That was early rock, man. I mean, that's bluegrass, but it's the closest thing to rockabilly. And then you take the black blues licks and speed them up, and that's what it was. And we put a drum beat to it. It was out of necessity. It was just, we borrowed, and people have always done that. And music is variation of this and that and this, and that's what, it's been that way all through the years.
And so it was the birth of rock and roll. Then came Memphis DJ Sam Phillips, who bought an old radiator shop at 706 Union Avenue in Memphis, which became the home of the Memphis Recording Service, and later, its label, Sun Records, where for $3.98, you could get an acetate disc and record a love song for your sweetheart. And it was Sam Phillips' business savvy that challenged the times and raised a little hell, taking a white man who had the black sound and feel, fueling controversy, creating so-called rock and roll stars. Memphis has been good to music, for it was the place trumpeter-composer W.C. Handy achieved national prominence. Memphis gave W.C. Handy the opportunity, and the father of the blues gave the world a new kind of music. The Beale Street Blues, the Memphis Blues, the St. Louis Blues, songs that were to be translated and sung in every language known to man. And it is Delta blues legend Robert Johnson described as the lonely musician who is credited for defining the 30s blues era. Johnson's 29-song repertoire is considered some of the most influential American music ever written, taking the blues to unprecedented levels, first crossing over into rockabilly and rock and roll and penetrating popular music of every genre. The Johnson history has all the makings of a tragic novel, including a life cut short as a result of a series of mysterious incidents, until an only son, Claude, surfaces and breaks the spell, making way for the Johnson clan to finally bask in the glory of a musical legacy.
In the mid-1990s, the Smithsonian Institution undertook a major research project to look for the origins of rock and roll and soul music. During their whole research, everything kept coming back to Memphis. Not necessarily the city, but really the area surrounding the city of Memphis. It's really about a history. It's about a story of people that came together, came out of the Delta, came out of the agricultural areas around Memphis, and really came together to bring about the origins of rock and roll and soul music.
It was very segregated at the time, and you had the blacks had their clubs and places to go, whites had theirs. And I think what you also had was like one of the first black radio stations, WDIA. And people, white teenagers were being, indoctrinated into black culture by listening to the radio station. Then you wanted to go hear Dewey Phillips, who comes on at night, and he's playing this cross mix of music. But as far as the culture goes, it was some time after that before blacks and whites actually started, and to be quite honest with you, it's not total. Today, there's still some problems of that, unfortunately.
Hank Williams was doing Bucket's Got a Hole in It. Hey, good looking. That was early. Even before then, guys like the Delmore Brothers, I mean, they were hacking right in there. It's always been around. It was defined at Sun Records. We laid the drum beat on there, and somebody said, hey, them hillbillies in Memphis is rocking our music. That's what Nashville was saying. And they got mad at us.
So it's much more than just a sound. It's about a people, a group of people of all races, of all socioeconomic backgrounds that came together. It took blues, it took gospel, it took field hollers, it took music that was sung on the porches of the agricultural areas and the farms. It took the small portable radios that sat on your kitchen table and the kitchen of small farmhouses that listened to WMS radio coming out of Nashville. So it took all of that really blended together to form rock and roll and soul music. I had a reporter from the New York Times ask me, could rock and roll have been born in any other city? It could have, but all the elements would have had to have been there. The agriculture would have had to have been there. Beale Street would have had to have been there. Sam Phillips would have had to have been there. You'd have had to have black people. You'd have had to have white people. You'd have to have Rufus Thomas. You'd have to have poor people like the young guy that came out of Tupelo, Mississippi, being Elvis Presley.
Elvis loved them sequins. Look what he did when he got the money. Hell, he had them. He looked like a piece of glass on stage. We wanted them, but we couldn't get them. So we'd go to Beale Street and buy us the clothes that the blacks were wearing, puff sleeves, and just to look different than the cats sitting on the front row, you know.
It was the early rockabilly sound, that is, a white good old boy singing black blues to an upbeat rhythm, that has influenced many of today's great artists, including one of the greatest bands in music history, the Band. Bob Dylan's band, or should we say, Ronnie Hawkins' band.
Levon Helms, yeah, I enjoyed him playing with me. That's the kind of drumming I like. That's rockabilly. Levon asked me, he said, man, they said it'd be all right. Would it be all right with you can I just play Blue Suede Shoes with you? That was the close of this show. And I said, did you ask me, could you, or did you tell me you was going to? I said, please say you was going to. He said, I will if I can. I sure would like to. Yeah, to say I didn't feel that old Memphis drumming would be the wrong statement. I certainly did. You hit right in the bottom of that beat with that drum lick, and that's where that boy was and still is. People like Fluke Holland that played that, he's learned more drum licks, but when it comes to them old early Sun records, I have tried, since my boy Stan has been playing drums ever since he was a kid, I said, don't get too fancy, son. If you're going to be a great drummer, then go on and be a great drummer. But if you're thinking about working with your daddy, just concentrate on that beat, because that's about what the drum did back then, and that's all I'm used to. I'm not used to a bunch of stuff around it.
Keeping it simple was easy for me to do, but you know, with rockabilly music, it sounds simple, but you've got to get in that groove with it. And with him playing that lead guitar, my brother over there on bass, you know, and when we'd get in that groove, we knew it. So, you know, keeping it simple was the only way to play it.
Oh, well, we were the Hawks. Now, we used to have Saturday afternoon matinees, and it was the only time people under 21 could come and hear us play music. And our matinees, people would line up, you know, to see us play, because there were a lot of younger people under 21 that couldn't get in through the week. And also a lot of people that were from the local bands in Toronto would come, because after the Friday night party, we were too hungover to sing the matinee, you know, it was kind of earlier in the day. So we would feature everybody from, oh God, David Clayton Thomas used to get up and sing, Jason King, a lot of people actually, just, and whoever was coming through town, you know, and that would make for an easy matinee. And but there was definitely more than one band in Toronto when I was here. When we started playing with Bob in '65, we came up and we played Massey Hall at one point. Yeah, that was a pretty funny night. I think people threw things on stage, you know. There was a little booing and a little cheering, a little booing, you know, and it was strange. The only other time I'd been to Massey Hall was to see Ray Charles, which was a few years beforehand. With Bob, yeah, we played Maple Leaf Gardens, is that it? That's what it's called? Maple Leaf Gardens? Toronto Maple Leaf hockey team. I think we played there 2 nights with Bob. And we did about 40 shows like that, though, in North America.
And it wasn't just the band and Bob Dylan who were some of the greatest names in music to appear at Maple Leaf Gardens. Back in 1957, Elvis Presley, one of the 3 Sun Records' early rebel-rousers, took to the stage in Toronto on April 3rd, 1957, just before he enlisted in the Army, and shook Toronto up with his gyrations that had wide-eyed teenage girls screaming, sighing, and pounding their feet. Was Elvis really the depraved, sex-crazed devil incarnate? Or was he simply pure rock and roll? Elvis was more than just a pretty face. He was well-mannered, polite, and articulate, qualities that are often overlooked. He also had an opinion about his music, which he shared with others, especially when confronted by discerning journalists.
If you think rock and roll won't diminish in popularity, what do you think sustains its popularity? What quality of it that you think makes it popular?
Well, sir, rock and roll has been around for many years. It used to be called rhythm and blues. And as far back as I can remember, it's been very big. Although in the last 5 years it's gotten much bigger. But I personally don't think it will ever die completely out. Because they're going to have to get something mighty good to take its place as far as the young people are concerned.
What about cleaning it up or at least improving it morally and maybe taking the wiggle out of it?
Well, sir, you take the wiggle out of it, it's finished.
The death of Elvis shocked the world, touching virtually everyone. Some said it was the beginning of the end for rock and roll, but time has proven them wrong. Rock and roll is here to stay. And nowhere is it more prevalent than Great Britain, where old rock and roll has thrived to this day, and actually given cause for a resurgence in North America.
Got the rock and roll blues, got the rock and roll blues, got 'em in the bottom of my rocking shoe. Got the rhythm and blues, got the rhythm and blues, got 'em in the bottom of my blue suede shoe.
Hemsby is keeping the roots of rock and roll alive. Not only rock and roll, but the influences of rock and roll, the hillbilly, the rocking R&B, boogie woogie, even a little bluegrass and Louisiana music. It's all the roots that came together to form the fusion of what we call rockabilly, the purest form of rock and roll, or later known as rock and roll.
The situation in Britain was quite different from the States. In America, the rock and roll music phenomenon grew naturally out of other musics. It grew out of rhythm and blues, out of country music, out of gospel, and all the other components which gave you rock and roll.
We're gonna rock and roll tonight. I tell you what I'm gonna do with you. I'm gonna take you all home with me. Damn.
Jack Earls was one of the son artists who didn't get lucky. Obviously, once Elvis had his early hits.
I was there in the 50s when it was all going on. Yeah, sure was. You know, I can tell you some stories about Elvis and Sam Phillips. Sam Phillips, when I started recording for him, he said, I'd rather have one guy that writes his own songs as 10 that don't, because they're too hard to come by songs, you know. And then one time, Johnny Black was up at Chisco Hotel where Dewey Phillips had a show called Red, Hot, and Blue. And Elvis was 17 at that time. And Johnny and myself was going up to see Dewey, and the guy wouldn't let us go up there because he said somebody come by and tore up the hotel the night before. So here come Elvis. And the guy said, Elvis said, go up with me. And the guy said, okay, Mr. Presley. Mr. Presley was 17 years old. We got up there and the girls were hollering, spit on me, Elvis, spit on me, Elvis. And, you know, he just started. Yeah, that's all right, Mama, and a few songs. You know, I love Carl Perkins. That's my king of rock and roll, and he always has been. I remember when he come to Memphis with a pair of overalls on, okay? But before he died, you know, he had a stroke. And I told him I had a show in Sweden, and I said I'm gonna do a couple of Carl's songs because he's not able to do them. He's not able to come, so I always do a tribute to Carl. I'll do one tonight. I always do, because he's my king of rock and roll, and I've always loved Carl Perkins. He married the same year I did, and he's still with his wife when he died in '98. And I've been married 54 years, and I've still got my wife. So thank the Lord, we've been together 54 years, and Carl would still be with his wife if he hadn't passed, you know. So, yeah, I've always, Carl Perkins was tip-top in my book, always.
When rock and roll was new, in 1956, Elvis had signed for RCA and he'd become a major star. They had no idea what to do next. They'd got Elvis, and there were no rules. There was no way of knowing quite what was going to happen next as far as this strange new music was concerned. And not unreasonably, they looked for a female Elvis, and Janis Martin was the person that they picked upon. She was a very young girl, She was amazingly talented, tremendous voice.
I was appearing on the Old Dominion Barn Dance, and we would drive down every Saturday, and I had the radio on, and I was switching stations or whatever, and I ran up on this song, Mama, He Treats Your Daughter Mean. And I told my mom, I said, that is my music. That's what I want to do. When Elvis was signed with RCA, it was in January of 1956. I signed with RCA in March of 1956. And the publicity guy come back and he said, she moves on the stage kind of like Elvis. She's got the same rhythm. I think this would be great if we billed her as a female Elvis. Because at the time there were very few women even recording. And then to take a little fresh-faced 15-year-old girl and put her out there on the stage that moved around a little bit, they considered it vulgar. I didn't sing with shoes on, so they thought that was vulgar. It was a very innocent time. And I just don't think they were ready to accept that from a woman. When I first came over to England in 1982, I never imagined what it really was until I came and saw the audiences, how enthused they are over the music, how they love it. And it was just almost overwhelming to me. And 23 years now I've been coming and doing it, and the fans just keep coming. It keeps growing. Now it's not only in Europe, it's in the United States, and it's just getting bigger and bigger all the time. And I hope and pray that at some time it will come back. The world was ready for Elvis maybe, but they were not ready for a female Elvis.
Because she should have been a major star, there's no question of that. Jay Chevalier, he's a Louisiana musician. Down in Louisiana, the influences are so different. You've got the Cajuns, you've got the Spanish-speaking people, and the music is very different down there. You get accordions and fiddles, and it's just a slightly different feel from what you get in other parts of the States.
Somehow or another I slipped into country music after watching Gene Autry movies and listening to Hank Williams, and then I started going to some black churches and listening to soul music, gospel music. People that were coming on like were Rockin' Sidney, and Fats Domino really turned me on. And of course Little Richard and all those black artists seemed to give a soul feeling to what some of us knew country artists, which was turning to rockabilly, and rockabilly become a merge of all this and a new way to express ourselves with a shuffle beat and a backbeat. And with the Cajun music, a backbeat is very, very important. Hank Williams was a real poet. He was probably the greatest songwriter ever lived. And the only other artist that I can think that writes as well as Hank Williams and wrote from a different venue was Chuck Berry. And Chuck Berry was the black man, or the black music's Hank Williams, and they were both genius. And you know, Chuck is still with us, and Hank left at age 29. But his songs were so soulful that, you know, you could just feel the pain and the hurt, and he just wrote so descriptive. And a lot of the historians are saying that Hank was the first real rockabilly artist, because he put the drums finally in the band and then the 4/4 shuffle beat, and he just sang with such enthusiasm and such poignancy. And that when Elvis came along, and Jerry Lee and Carl Perkins and people like this, that really, and Bill Haley in the Comets, Bill put it on the map with Rock Around the Clock.
And we used to sit round the radio, listening to Radio Luxembourg, with our herringbone suits on, white stiff collars and black ties, because that was a school uniform, and we used to listen to Bill Haley, Rocking Through the Rye. Never got over that one. We'd never heard anything like it. And we used to flick our ties over our jackets, and because we thought that was really cool at the time.
Our first trip to Europe, we were booked, and we came over on the Queen Mary, and got off at Cherbourg, and took a boat train. They had a boat train ready for the band, and it came from when we got off the ship until we got to Waterloo Station. We had our own train, and the people on the train were all winners of contests for the fan club. And of course we got to Waterloo Station, and we couldn't get off the train because there was just thousands and thousands of people at the station. So they finally did get us out of there, but a lot of our clothes were gone by the time we got to our cars. But it was very, very exciting. We did the Sports Palace in Berlin, which turned out to be a big mess because there was a big riot. And it wasn't nothing to do with the music or the people. It was a little crowd that wanted to make a little trouble. And from that, it started into a big thing, and we actually had to stop the show and get off the stage because they were uncontrollable. We just couldn't get them in place. So that was the first bad news of a rock and roll tour that created a riot.
Very frightening. They come up on the stage, turn the piano upside down, then they start to play the drums with the drummer. He was afraid. He got up, and I just grabbed my guitar, and we were all led upstairs on the roof.
Art Adams is a classic example of somebody who can perform a really wild, primeval rockabilly show. There's no nice soft edges to his music. It's real visual stuff, curling lip, legs, flailing guitar, thrashing, exciting music. It's exciting. You can't sit still. You can't sit at all. You've got to be on your feet. You've got to be dancing. You've got to be jumping around. Wild stuff. Art Adams has got a lot to offer.
I always wanted to be an entertainer. I don't know about being a star, and I just wanted to be an entertainer. But the early influence was I listened to the bluegrass music, Hank Williams, and I listened to rhythm and blues. I listened to Muddy Waters and Mama Thornton, and all the music that helped create, put it together with gospel and bluegrass and country. Turned out it's what made rockabilly music, because I think when I started doing rockabilly, nobody was calling it rockabilly. They actually was calling it hillbilly, and my influences on the rockabilly music was Jerry Lee Lewis and Carl Perkins. I loved Carl Perkins and Jerry Lee. They just, to me, they had their own style, and of course we all love Elvis, but I never thought that Carl got the recognition that he should have got, and I do a lot of Carl songs and have all through the years. There's not too many songs he did that. Carl did some country too, but his rockabilly songs. I think he was a true rockabilly, and it's like Jerry Lee. He never wrote many songs, maybe a half a dozen, maybe even less, but he could take somebody else's song. He did some of the same things that probably was because of Jerry Lee that I started doing some of Hank Williams songs like You Win Again, because he had a great version of You Win Again, and he had his own style to it, and so did Carl. There was probably more influence on me than Elvis.
It wasn't until 1957, when Bill Haley and the Comets came to Britain for the first time, that audiences had the chance to experience the excitement of a live rock and roll show, and its excitement is the key to the whole thing. The great rock and roll singers, all of them, had dynamic, exciting and unpredictable stage acts, and that's where they differed from so much of the music that came before them. They didn't just stand in front of a microphone. Bill Haley was the first to come. He had a self-contained show. All his musicians would jump around on the stage. He had a saxophone player who'd be lying on his back. He had a double bass that would be swinging up in the air. The whole thing was a visual experience, and it was unlike anything that anybody had ever seen before.
When we first came to England, it was the first rock band to come here. And we toured all of England, every city, just about every city in England we did.
And the people came out and they just loved what we do, and we loved them coming out to see us. We're just an old bunch of guys having a good time with music that we played 50 years ago, and we're going to keep playing it. We're going to rock till we drop.
The first Bill Haley tour was just phenomenally successful, and nobody ever has managed to exceed that in Britain. It just swept the country. It was front page news day after day in the British national press.
We did a show at the theater in London, and it was only strictly for the news media, because nobody in all the towns we went to were allowed to bring cameras into the theater. So they had to take all their pictures in one day. Every city had photographers, and they got to the theater and we did our show, and they all took their photos. So every time we went to a town, they had photos to put in the paper that we were coming to town. And that's how the tour went. It was just very, very successful. I think we played the Lowe's theaters all over England.
Jerry Lee was just the greatest, there's no doubt.
Jerry was just a completely different animal. He was just absolutely wild, unpredictable, and really the British people weren't ready for that experience in 1958. We still lived in a society which had many Victorian standards, which would now be looked at as amazingly old-fashioned. But when Jerry arrived, and it became known that he had a wife with him who was his first cousin, that was something which was not acceptable. But that was only the start. When it was found she was 13 years old, and that he, at the age of, I think it was 21, she was his third wife, that was just too much. And the British press, the British media, and I suppose in fairness the British people just couldn't take it.
I was working in a warehouse in London, and the paper describing his sensational marriage to a 13-year-old and being thrown out of the country was actually on the wall. We stuck it out and put it on the wall, but I was there for Jerry Lee Lewis when he came back, and it was the greatest show I've ever seen in my life. It was the Mitcham Majestic, and I had a girlfriend, fortunately, living 100 yards from the Majestic, and I've never seen anything like it. I reckon there were 300 people in a 800 capacity hall, and they rioted. They stormed the stage. The guy was pure dynamite.
Let It Rock was a great success. It was it contained all the components you want for. It was exciting. It was varied, and you got together some of the greatest available talent. I mean, any show that's got Jerry and Carl and Ronnie Hawkins on it is going to be a winner.
Let It Rock was definitely one of the great comeback shows, although it happened in Canada, a little bit of a backwater for music, but it was one that a lot of people, I now am sure, should have been there for that one, including myself.
We're from Sweden, and we come here to Hemsby to live and breathe rock and roll and rockabilly music.
There are certain festivals who keep the music alive and the scene alive, where you see all the dressed up people in the 50s gear and with the old classic cars.
Who would have thought rock and roll in the year 2005 would be as healthy as it is today?
Rock and roll will never, never die.
Yeah, we talk about looking back, they really hadn't done a better day than this one. And tomorrow will be just as good. It's what you make of it, Life is a memory, but we get wrapped up in looking back, we'll run into something trying to go forward.
That's the way
so
it is.
I look forward to tomorrow. I don't think the world's dry. I think Ronnie Hawkins will have a hit record tomorrow.
Oh, baby.
You get that right song, get behind that microphone, it can happen. You don't get too old for
Well,
this.
it's like I told you, if we don't hit the big time in the next 25 or 30 years, I'm going to pack her hand. We got our memories, boy, and there ain't too many out there. Got to see what we've seen in that old life. If you like music, because you was right there in the beginning, you've seen them all come up, you've seen them all go down, you've seen them come up again. That's something, if you're into music, you've seen it all. I sat right there, and boy, the Beatles, Carl.
Yeah.
The Beatles were the big, they knew every song that you did. They knew every one of them. Boy, you were the biggest fan that they had. And if we didn't have any sense back there, you could just tour with nobody but the Beatles.
Yeah.
Because
I had no idea. I went over to England in '64. Oops. That's before I fell and broke my back in Canada. And I met these guys, and they'd never been to America. they had a hit record over there, and it was a hit over here called "I Want to Hold Your Hand." My kids was coming home from school. I want to hold your hand. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I said, well, them little boys look like girls.
You know, in 1964, I was in 6th grade in school, and the Beatles had just really came onto the scene. And I never will forget, there was one of these fly-by-night paperbacks that had come out. And a boy there, one of my friends there at school, showed me that book, and it said that their favorite artist was Carl Perkins. And I thought, well, man, there's got to be more than one Carl Perkins. It ain't Daddy. And I came home and told him, said, you know, this guy at school showed me a book where the Beatles said that you were their favorite singer. He said, them long-haired guys from England? And I said, yeah. Well, it wasn't no time that he went to England, and he met them there. And, of course, you know, he went over with Chuck Berry. They did a 3-week tour in '64. And then they cut 3 of his songs and invited him to the recording session. They did a thing called Matchbox, Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby, and Honey Don't.
When I met him over there, I'll never forget it. I said, I don't know whether you guys are trying to or not, but you sound a lot like them old Sun records. John Lennon said, say that again. I said, y'all sound, I hear some of that old Sun record sound. And it probably was the best thing I ever said. They said, well, he said that now. And they called some reporters over there. Carl Perkins said, it sounded like this. He said, man, you can't imagine how many hours we put in trying to, and to hear you say that. I said, well, I didn't mean to step on your toe. Oh, man, it was good news to them.
I met George Harrison for the first time in 1989. Just a true gentleman, and just dearly loved my daddy. The anticipation in meeting him, you can just imagine growing up during the '60s and being a fan of the Beatles. But you know, we got to his home, and he took me. It was just me and him and my dad. We went out to he had a garden beside his home, and you know, I stepped back and looked. He was looking at my daddy the same way that I was looking at him, and I thought, man, this has come full circle around right here.
My boy Carl, I remember George told me he spent weeks, hours every day learning them old licks. And he's got them down pretty good. He can play them pretty good down there. There's only 2 or 3 guitar players I know that can really got your stuck. Them licks, you know, god dang, they're not easy. Them Segovia cats have trouble with them.
George was the type of guy that you soon forgot that he was who he was. And you got to the human side of him.
Eric Clapton told me, he said, man, first, his grandmama, who, by the way, just passed away recently, I was at Eric's house, I don't know, a few years ago. And he had a birthday party for his grandma. You know, she raised him. And, she said, what was that thing you had called Stomping the Blues? I said, well, it was Bopping the Blues, Grandma. She said, hell yeah, that's what it was. She was a great lady. She said, and Eric was sitting in a chair there. We were in a little circle in his den. She said, this boy like to drove me up a damn wall going, I said, what was that song? I said, that was Matchbox. She said, he liked to drove me crazy. And Eric told me, he said, man, I dug everything you did. I said, well, if you learned anything from me, you evidently forgot it, man. You ran off and left me. Where are my little licks? I said, you covered them up with such great picking.
We did a show in New York City, and he in a club there, and he came by himself and was sitting at a table. And Daddy saw him. We'd already started our show and saw him out there and said, Eric, come on up here. We got a guitar. Come on up here and play with us. And he got up and grabbed that guitar. Here I am on drums and all the other guys, and we're just mesmerized. Eric Clapton is getting on stage. Him turning around and smiling at each one, and he was ready to play, and played the whole set with us. I mean, you know, those kind of things didn't really, you know, they registered in how great it was to be it. But when I'd get home, I think, I can't believe what I've just done, you know. So I mean, there was some great times through the years. Truly was.
Ronnie, I know you experienced the same thing with your life, because, man, you burn a trail for many, many years. I often said, back through the years, I said, well, the damn Hawk's just sitting up there ready to strike. He could be, I know you've made a great living, you've had a big life and a wonderful life, because we've talked about your family, you've always loved them. You're kind of like me, you've been, if you're fed and you're warm, you're pretty happy, you know.
Lucky.
Raised poor as we were, I put a lot of emphasis on being at home and going fishing and living my life.
You know, he was a happy guy. He loved his family. My mom and him were married for 46 years up to his death. He was the type of guy, he'd get on his John Deere lawnmower and cut his grass. Nobody else cut his grass. And people here in the town where I've lived all my life would stop and just want to talk to him. He'd stop he wore the starter out trying to mow the yard.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. I married a little red-headed, simple lady 42 years ago, and she's still there. And if a man is blessed to find the right woman that understands him and will put up with a picker like...
they're scarce.
They're very scarce.
They're scarce.
Very scarce.
I've been with mine for 36 years. Well, like you're two luckiest girls in the world.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell the truth there. Two luckiest guys in the world. Yeah.
Two luckiest girls in the world have two good-looking country boys like us.
Oh, God.
And this is a dream for me, because when these people over here ask me if I was ruler of the world, what would I have? Final brothers, I remember. For rockabilly. Well, it was set. The only ones left that started it and still are rocking. Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, the band, because it was with me, and them two kids, I think, has got talent that could be big time sometime. And they're real good.
Larry Gowan, great keyboard player, great writer, great vocalist. He was always on the money, an incredible talent. He rocked every night. He had that spark that brought things to life. He still brings things to life. I'm just glad he was there that night, and I'm glad he was part of it, you know. It
was great to see these guys, Ronnie, Dad, and Jerry Lee Lewis, and them sharing their memories of years gone by, and all, and then seeing each one of them perform the way they did. I mean, they each looked spectacular. I don't think I know Daddy never had put on any better show than what he put on that night. Jerry Lee was in top form, and they looked happy doing what they were doing that night. And it came across that way, and that was a special evening, truly was.
I hope we can do this at least once a year for as long as we live.
You know, it's not a bad idea, because they're going to get more scarce as the years go by. One of these days, it'll be too late.
George Harrison came to my dad's funeral in '98. He chartered a plane from Los Angeles, just him and a pilot, and he came to the funeral here, and George had been going through radiation treatments for throat cancer at that time, and he was called on the platform, asked if he had a few words he wanted to say, and he got up there and talked about Carl Perkins' influence on the Beatles. And I never forget, when he was walking up there, he stopped, just a personal thing between him and Carl Perkins, and he patted that casket 3 times. Then he got up there and he spoke some, and he said, well, I just want to sing. He said, I'm going to do my favorite Carl Perkins, and picked up an old flat-top guitar and did a song called Your True Love. He told me later, he said, I didn't know if anything would come out. He said, I hadn't tried to sing in months and months since the throat radiation. He said, I had no idea anything would even come out. He said, but I just had to try. I said, well, let me tell you, you nailed it. And I said, he heard it too.
On Monday, January the 19th, 1998, at the age of 65, Carl Perkins died at Jackson Madison County General Hospital from complications related to a recent series of strokes. Now, there is only one of the $1 Million Quartet left, the killer, Jerry Lee Lewis. How true Carl's words are, as time and life on the road continues to erode the face of music. Just look at the loss of so many great musicians since the making of Let It Rock. Right within the body of this award-winning concert, so many great talents are no longer with us, in addition to legendary musician gentleman Carl Perkins. Bert Hermiston, one of Canada's more noted sax players who played with the Hawks for many years. Jerry Baird, veteran drummer and blues singer noted for his powerful backbeat and steady pace, a hit with the killer Jerry Lee Lewis. The incredibly talented Rick Danko of The Band, who moved on to rock and roll heaven like so many. Carl was right. Time is moving fast. Just look at the $1 Million Quartet. First, Elvis went. Then Carl, and Johnny Cash. Now, Jerry Lee Lewis is the only one left.
I think Jerry Lee Lewis is one of the greatest entertainers that I've ever, that I know of. I mean, you think of Jerry Lee Lewis, you think of piano players, but Jerry Lee Lewis is a great singer. I mean, the guy can sing anything. He can do gospel, he can do blues, he can do country, do rock and roll, and he's proven that. I mean, he's gone anywhere from Crazy Arms to Me and Bobby McGee to Great Balls of Fire to, you know, the Jimmy Rogers tunes. He can do it all, and can probably play classical if he wanted to, you know. But Jerry was a drummer also. I don't know if you knew that or not. Jerry Lee was a drummer. At least he told me he was, and I have no reason to doubt that. But Jerry's style of playing and my style of drumming really go hand in hand. And I think it was complemented both of us, really. I think it probably brought out the best in both of us.
I don't think I've ever had the pleasure. I've tried to run into you.
I saw you with a French whore in Toronto, Canada one time.
You did?
Yeah, that was before you got false teeth.
I hope you joined up with me and
Master, you think I don't know you?
Made a night out of it now.
I heard you'd become a Christian.
Is that right?
Minded person.
That's right. That's right.
I tell you what. Damn, we're being interviewed. I didn't know that. Actually, this is Elvis Presley and John Lennon. But he can still squat without sweating. That's great. Try that. But I was just talking about that band. You know, after listening to that band and playing with that, running that band, I don't think I could ever use my band again.
But you don't have to. Just give us the itinerary and we'll go with you.
I'll tell you what, I'm not even going without you.
That's good news to me, Jerry.
And how, but it would be worth it if you pay it all to them. I bet it would be more than whoever kick a little in. Man, that's where, hey, I'm telling you the truth, I have not had an inspiration like this. This is the first time I got married.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I've been on JW for years to bring you down to Helena to the Blues Festival.
I don't mean to keep interrupting, but I am really inspired.
Beautiful.
If I can't have a band like this to record with and to do shows with and even split the money with.
Now you're talking.
I do know that he used to hang around and try to steal my licks. You can talk to Mr. Ronnie Hawkins about that. He said he used to send Levon down to listen to me play.
Oh, that's worth it. You got to help everybody, ain't you?
Yeah, you do.
I mean, any damn people that cheat you out there. I just want to do it.
Well, I'll tell you what, you let me know anytime, Jerry. I'd love to go with you. Can I beat you for one of these?
You can have anything I got with my wife.
All right, bro.
And for 2 cents, I sell you her.
I met Jerry Lee. He came in to audition. I think maybe this may have been his second time in, but he came in and did songs called Crazy Arms and some other things. He had written a song called End of the Road and maybe another one, Louis Boogie maybe. But we'd gone through several songs, and I think Jack Clement was here doing the engineering that day, and he asked him if he knew anything else, and Ray Price had a song on the charts, Crazy Arms. It was #1 country, and Jerry Lee said, I do that. So he started it off, and I'm trying to figure out what in the heck I'm going to play in the middle of all this, you know. So you can hear me changing rhythms all the way through it. And when they heard it, they said, man, that's great. We'll take that one. So we didn't get a chance to go back and cut it again. So it was a pretty special little thing with Jerry there.
But she will tell you a lie.
I tell you what, I'm looking to go with you anytime you want to go, brother. Anytime, anywhere.
I'm talking about this band out here.
Mm-hmm. They'll go with us. They'll go. I'm going to play drums with them.
He was playing drums a while ago.
I play drums and French horn and mandolin.
Well, I said, they are really making a fool out of me tonight, aren't they? Ronnie done this purposely, I think.
I first met Ronnie Hawkins over in Fayetteville, Arkansas. He was probably a student, or at least he was at a club in Fayetteville. I think it was called the Shamrock Club. So anyway, Ronnie would come to Memphis and hang out, and I actually had met him one night at the Cotton Club, which was a big joint over in West Memphis, and we'd just gotten back from Canada with Conway Twitty and Billy Lee Riley, and I said, Ronnie, man, you'd be great up there, you know, and gave him the guy's phone number to call. He went to Canada and never came back. That's pretty unique in itself, you know. Here's a guy from the South that goes to Canada, and I guess he's still up there.
I never heard anything better. I never heard about a drummer, and I never heard about a band, and I never heard saxophone players, piano players, organ players, and that boy, I thought the boy was playing an organ over there, and he was playing a guitar. I said, that ain't Carl Perkins playing a guitar. I get looking at
Jeff Healy.
Jeff Healy, yeah.
And you know, Ronnie caught that and he made him stand up. I said, shit, that's that boy. Look at that boy, and he's a blind boy. And I told him when I walked over there, I said, son, you are a natural God-given talent.
Yeah, he is. He sure is. Absolutely.
He ain't out there on dope or hunting a woman or doing it. He's out there a godly musician, a God-given talent. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. He absolutely is. He's made it fairly quick too. Just within the last 2.5, 3.5 years, he really has. He was a big. Everybody in Canada knew him, you know, for a while.
The band.
He's really starting to come on now, you know.
Greatest band I've ever heard in my life. You know?
All right.
Jeff's incredible. An incredible guitar player. Another incredible talent, you know. And another person that didn't, you know, it wasn't learned in school. He brought that with him. He dug deep for that inside of Jeff.
Jeff right here, dude.
Yeah, I told Jeff on that stage.
How you doing?
I told him, I said, you are a God-given talent. Is that right? That's what I said, right? You know, I said he's not out there chasing women.
Pleasure to know you, buddy. You sound great, as usual.
I haven't seen you since we did the thing at the Commodore back.
That's right, out in B.C. That's been a while back, yeah.
Before Christ.
Yeah. I tell you what, and Jeff has sold a bunch of records since then, too, man.
You guys are.
Got JW nervous over here.
Yeah. Oh, we just come up to help the Hawk celebrate his birthday, and
yeah, we're gonna
get to play with you.
I thought this guy here worked with you though.
We talk about Crossroads a lot here at this museum. Aside from being at FedEx Forum, which is Memphis's premier sports and entertainment complex, we boast one of the most prominent musical intersections where this museum sits. We actually sit right at the corner of Beale Street, one of the most legendary musical streets in the entire world. And what Memphians refer to as 3rd Street that runs right next to the museum, it's actually what musicians refer to as Highway 61 or Blues Highway, which is where the sharecroppers, which is where the musicians came up out of the Delta. A lot of people think that rock and roll started when Elvis Presley went into Sun Studios and first recorded that. Elvis was greatly influenced by this street right in front of us, by Beale Street. He sat on that curb. He listened to African-American blues musicians. He listened to music of early blues musicians like Robert Johnson. He loved this music. In his house, he listened to gospel music, which is what his mother listened to. So this is, again, part of the whole melting pot that we refer to as rock and roll and soul music. It was not one person. Memphis and the world, and North America especially, are having a revitalization of rock and roll and soul music.
It's totally unbelievable to me. I can't believe I'm here in Europe to give this interview.
When I come back to Sun, it really kind of reminds me of going home. I've spent so much time here, so much when I was in 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, that it just a lot of fond memories, and that's another thing. And when you walk in, though, it's just a certain vibes in this place. You know immediately that there's something special about Sun Studio.
There were 3 great rock and roll singers: Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and a cat called Ronnie Hawkins. They were the 3 greats.
I think that the British rock and roll scene is just one of the
best in the world today?
I'm 72, but I still do the best I can do.
Looking forward to a new career over here in Europe and in England and all the countries that embrace what you love and what I love and what I'm hoping the folks that are watching this documentary love. Rockabilly and country music.
Elvis's success would probably have come anyway because you're talking about a great talent. But the way that it came and the time that it came is relevant to the social position in America at that time. Music had been segregated. Black people listened to black music, white people listened to white music.
If I were ruler of the world and I could hire any musician I wanted to play that old Memphis stuff I loved all my life, everybody on here would have been in it right here. There's 1,000 years of knowledge, at least. Well, 500 just counting Carl.
Well, sir, you take the wiggle out of it, it's finished.
Went down to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. Went down to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. I asked the good Lord above, how much sell old days? I'm standing at the crossroads. I tried to flag me a ride. I'm standing at the crossroads. I'm trying to flag me a ride. Ain't nobody seem to know me. Everybody pass me by. You can run, you can run, you can run, boy. Tell my friend Willie Brown. You can run, you can run, you can run, boy. Tell my friend Willie Brown. Lord, I'm standing at the crossroads. Baby, I believe I'm sinking down. Went down to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. Went down to the crossroads,